notion that there was undue influence, right? That you set the criteria, there may be many that meet it, but much like any other type of random draw, your chances are within the odds.
Right. So it's competitive, right? You have 5, 10, 1 in 10. And just as much chance as anybody else. I like it.
All right, but it sounds like that has been challenged as well, so, okay. Because, the next thing that's going to come up, and I'm certain that this happened in Westland. All the people that were on that selection board, was there any inference that there was any undue influence or, whomever is selected, I believe that, there's, number one, there's always a chance of something being done untoward, but more than likely, no matter what they do, they're going to be accused of doing something untoward. And another thing is looking through their ordinance that I'd like to see, as a reference back to our ethics ordinance, that, any of the applicants, if they, buy a lunch or lunches or whatever that exceeds our ethics ordinance, that is a violation of the process. Because I know many, many folks, and probably sure all of you, someone said either, hey, can we go grab a beer? Can we go? And maybe that's fine within reason, but this is probably, since cable franchises and liquor licenses, within the area of potential risk for maybe all of us, under cable franchises, you knew once you had the cable franchise that it was like Medallion in New York City, right? You could sell that. So Wayne Cablevision became McLean Hunter, became Comcast. And probably what we're talking about here, we're going to start off with these individual licenses. I suspect over the next 10, 20 years, there's going to be 2, 3, 4 players, right? These are tokens. So I'd like to have that addressed within this, right? That no one operator can consolidate the licenses such that they control more than 50% of the business at any one point in time. Thinking, kind of those next steps down. Council.
So however we choose the ordinance, that if we pass an ordinance that we have 4 and 10, provision and grow, just a number. Once we approve this ordinance, the city council is out of it. There's the choosing of the people, we have no say-so in it. I think that would lead to problems. No, not just the city clerk.
There's a committee in our ordinance.
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman, in this one, it would be, in the last one, it was the chairman and their designee from the city council as part of the commission.
I think the city council should be out of it, totally. It should be,
It doesn't, Mr. Chairman, through the chair, Charlie, it doesn't matter who's on it, whoever gets picked, somebody, just like the chairman said, they're going to say that you knew somebody, I knew somebody, anything. So, by all means, you guys can decide how you want the selection commission to go. But at the end of the day, in my opinion, we're going to get sued and people will accuse anybody of malfeasance. That's just my opinion.
The chair, if I could ask the question. Brandon, I know in your initial review committee, I believe it was the mayor and the council chair, some other people. And then there was some issues down the road where they opted, they did not want to be included in that review committee. Can you explain what happened that process?
I don't know that I remember necessarily, to be honest with you, how that developed, but I can tell you that we had a selection committee that was comprised of the city planner, fire chief, and the police chief. And the idea was that all of these people are either selected through civil service or through council confirmation.
Was it initially, was it the mayor part of the review committee?
So no, I don't think so. We do have a marijuana business review board, and that board was a mayoral appointee, and then either 2 council members or their designees. And there wasn't possibility that those would actually be council members, and then, through the course of deliberations, they decide not to be involved.
Maybe that's the big one. So now that committee has no council members.
The Marijuana Business Review Board does not. But that board in Westland, and I don't know that other communities have anything similar necessarily, but that board in Westland was really designed to handle like adverse licensing decisions after licenses were already issued. They were given some duties within the selection policy also to handle sort of appeals of scoring decisions and things like that.
All right, so again, that would be probably something we need to come back to, right, is who would be on that board and how they were selected. I did see that in both the draft of Taylor as well as Westland. One thing in talking about ethics that I did note in here is that there is a prohibition on people being hired by any of these businesses within a certain period of time. That is not in the Taylor draft ordinance, but it is within the Westland ordinance, and it enumerates a number of department heads. Section 29-9A, so this prohibited practices regarding city officials. And this is, again, key that I saw as a difference between Westlands and Taylor. Applicants and licensees are restricted from entering into employment or contractual arrangements with the following city officials during their term of office or for 2 years after the official leaves office for any reason. The mayor or deputy mayor, we don't have that title, but the director of any city department, the city clerk, deputy city clerk, any member of the city council, any member of the planning commission, so on and so forth. So again, that I think is key difference between our draft and what Westland had. Has there been any issues in terms of that enforceability?
So we haven't had anybody leave to go work for a marijuana business. That's what you're asking.
Okay. But I just thought that was a kind of a key provision. Again, whether or not, putting it in writing to ensure that we're above reproach of whatever we do try to keep. Maybe that takes us back to the do's and don'ts. I think that's where you were at.
Thank you. So I just wanted to go through a couple of things with the MRTMA to talk about what it says specifically that cities can do and maybe some things to avoid. So we went through I sort of flew through the different license types that we have with respect to adult use marijuana establishments. So the retail type facilities, the micro businesses where you have grow, process, and retail sort of on a smaller scale, all in one location, processors, growers, designated consumption establishments potentially. So the city, any municipality can decide which licenses it's going to have, if any. Can completely prohibit all license types as well. So your typical sign regulations and zoning regulations, the law contains the authority to implement the municipal licensing process. And I already touched on this, but if the city limits the number of licenses and you have less people apply or more people apply than a license is available, then you have to select among the competing applicants based on some type of competitive process. Now, what exactly that means, I think, is being litigated currently, but I think we all have an idea of sort of what a competitive process is, and I'll leave that at that for now. As far as the don'ts go, I talked about this earlier as well, unreasonably impractical regulations. You can't restrict the transportation of marijuana through the community. So you may have secured transporters, for example, in Wayne, that need to drive through Taylor to get to wherever they're going. Can't restrict that type of transportation. And also facilities that are licensed at retail can do home deliveries. And so I don't know that's probably going on right now, nobody knows about it. But there probably is retail home delivery in Taylor, but that's allowed at the state level. And there's also restrictions on medical and adult use facilities in terms of, the city can't restrict them from operating at a joint location together. I think that's another area that's probably going to be litigated as far as exactly what that means, because I don't think it's exactly clear from the law.